They don't work there.
All right, thank you everybody for coming. My name is Taylor. I am Paul's assistant here at the Utah Apartment Association. He's down out of town at a meeting for the association today, so he asked me to kick us off. So today we're going to have two presentations. We'll start off with Brandon Stanger, who's going to present on emergency preparedness and spring cleaning. So, it's fine either way. So if you would like to use a mic, you're welcome to, but if you speak loud enough,
okay. If you guys can't hear me in the back, just give me the thumbs up. So just so I kind of get a feel for who's who, how many property managers do we have as far as profession here tonight? Any property managers? Okay. Any leasing agents? So I guess mom, pa owners? Everybody mostly? Any maintenance folks? No? Okay. You guys are going to have a good time tonight. As far as age of properties go, how many of your properties are 30 years and older? Bulk of them? Okay. Anybody have stuff that's newer than the last 5 to 10 years? You're in a good spot. But yeah, so I'll cover quite a bit of stuff tonight. Please ask questions. My background is licensed, full-fledged property management. I used to run Ladybug Property Management up out of Weber County. I grew that to over 100 and a quarter units, and then I just recently opened up my own brokerage, so I'm now Beehive Property Management and Realty. I've done single-family homes, small, multifamily, storage lots, mobile home parks, anything that somebody wants managed, I'll pretty much take a crack at it. I love the business. I love the fact that every day something's different. One day it's sprinklers, the next week it's swamp coolers, and then the evictions and all the other fun stuff that goes with that. And then I actually have my own maintenance company too. I've done lots and lots of maintenance. I've seen pretty much anything you can throw at me from inside to outside of a house, especially if it's single family residential. So with that, we're going to go through, and I've adapted this presentation from one other group. So in the first part, there's some real basic stuff. But when we get further on into it, there's a lot more. So first off, in case of emergencies, how many of you guys have a second contact that your tenants can call? Property manager pretty much is about, looks like the only one. Very, very crucial. I have some guys that own multiple properties, and they know that I'm either going to be in town when they're out of town, or other property managers and myself will tag team and we'll be like, hey, I'm going on the cruise.
We're all going on.
Yeah, there is a cruise, by the way, for to learn a lot about the legal side of the business if you guys are interested. But one of the most important things that I can try to relate to you is have another contact, so that way if you can't be reached, your tenants have somebody else they can fall back on, okay? It can be another friend, somebody else in the business, somebody else in this room. You guys can maybe buddy up and say, hey, we might have about the same amount of units. We're both in the kind of the same location. Why don't we use each other's name and numbers to have as a second point of contact? Because that's going to save you guys a lot of money when an emergency hits if you can have somebody boots on the ground. Case in point, who's dealt with any floods in the last week or two with the secondary water? You guys are lucky. I only had one call this year, and luckily it was another manager's call, not mine. Manager calls me, hey, I'm up skiing. I can't get to this right now. Can you send somebody over right away and take a look? I've got water going in a basement. Secondary water came on after the 15th. Tenants didn't realize it. Valve was open. Water hose basically straight for the window. We were able to get there within 30 minutes and solved it, and didn't have any actually water ever make it into the house. But if there wasn't that secondary contact, there could have been a major, major loss on that owner's hands. How many people have it marked in big black writing where the water turnoff is? Another real important thing. Wherever the water spot is, you can just write on there, water shut off. Or as soon as they open the panel, turn handle with an arrow so they know exactly how to turn it off. Because if you don't, what good's a shut off? The number one thing I'd like to do when there's a new tenant move in is to show them where the water turnoff is. Because that's going to be the #1 issue long-term that's going to cause problems. Anybody have a pre-printed magnet they can stick on their fridges? I don't see any heads shaking, except one here again. Vistaprint, you can get them made up for almost near nothing, and it's one of the easiest, simplest things you can do. In case of emergency, life-threatening, dial 911. If not, put your phone number there, and if not, put your second person's phone number there, okay? If you put that on the fridge, it will pay for itself the first call you ever get in an emergency. People can, when there's an emergency, they never can find your phone number. They lost their phone and they don't know how to call you. They got their phone stolen and they haven't put their new contacts in there. You'll hear all the excuses out there, but if you have a magnet on the fridge, they'll know, hey, all I do is I go right to the side of the fridge, I pick up the phone, leave the message, and hopefully you're able to respond quick enough to get some help and have maybe a maintenance person on call or somebody else that can help you guys out. So those are kind of the 3 big takeaways for just the emergency side of things. Have a second contact, know where those water turn-offs are for your tenants, and lastly, that magnet on the fridge. The biggest thing with safety, when in doubt, get out. If they're concerned, just get out of the house. Sorry, you're going to have to wait a little while. We'll get somebody there, but just get out. A loss of life is not worth it for no matter what's going on, okay? If there's a gas smell, and you can put that even on your magnet, call Questar if they can't get a hold of you, okay? Questar will go out for free and take a look around that house. They've got special readers that can actually sniff the gas, things like that. They are a great, great resource. Does anybody have non-Questar here? Or is everybody Questar tenant? Or
Fire department will come out too, and they have readers, and they can dispatch whoever in the area, and I've never been charged when they come out.
Yep. So yep, fire department or Questar. If there's an electric issue, you can try to have the tenants just flip the breaker, and then that gives you time to send someone by. And the biggest thing is, if there's any kind of dripping or flooding, have them turn the water off. I love to get the phone call, oh, I got water dripping, great, where's it at? Oh, well, it's here or here. Well, did you turn the water off? Well, I don't know how to turn it off or something. It's like, you see that little thing under the sink? So again, if you can do a little bit of prevention, it'll pay for itself in the end. Most of the time, your tenants are never going to come out here and turn that off, okay? That's why I say if you could just have them call Questar, the fire department, call you, you're probably going to be better off. If you want, Harbor Freight sells the little tool. You can strap it onto that and have it there. It's not a bad idea. If there was ever a lawsuit, you could probably say, hey, I had that there for them. I didn't know that they didn't turn it off or something. So that could be a CYA if you wanted to. Over here on your electrical panels, usually at the very top, how many people are real familiar with how the electric goes on and off? Okay, one in the back. Starts at the top, and then from there it works down through all of the other different rooms. So if there's a problem, a lot of times we say, find the biggest one and flip it off, and at least they're done for the time being. How many of you guys had these phone calls? A few nods, a few smiles. That's the first thing you ask is it in your bathroom? Is it in your kitchen? Is it in the garage? As far as where the electrical problem is. And then you can't see this really far down here, but it just says if the power in the bathrooms, kitchens, garage, you need to look for these and hit the button. Use something that powers up to verify they're working. Have them plug in their phone charger and go around and plug it in. They'll know if it's working or not, and then pretty soon you can trace back usually to where it comes, and you never even have to go out to the property, or you never even have to call an electrician. If you guys don't know how a GFCI works, they're what they call daisy chained a lot of times. That just simply means wherever this one is in the chain, everything behind it, if it got wired right, will die when that gets tripped. So very often you will have multiple bathrooms connected to the same one. So I'll get the, oh, I can't use my hair dryer in the master bath. Okay, great. Why don't you go into the guest bath and look for one of those, press the button and tell me what happens. Oh, okay, great, it's working good now, okay? So keep that in mind. These are chained together, and often they will go from different rooms.
And depending on who wires them, I've seen them where they've wired actual bedrooms.
Absolutely.
And they're not needed in bedrooms, but.
There is so much hodgepodge stuff going on out there. That brings me to this first example. I'll just kind of walk this down real quick. But can you see the edge of that? I just pulled this out of a house a couple weeks ago. They call, hey, my laundry machine keeps sparking where it's plugged in. Okay? 4th of July. Yeah, it basically did. I even put a little meter on it. Sure enough, sparking the meter. So who's ever dealt with aluminum wiring? Couple? Some of you guys that have the 30-year-old plus houses, you'll see it. So what's the trick with aluminum wiring?
You don't, the more you bend it, the more it's subject to damage.
Okay?
So when you do splice it, you have to use wire nuts that are approved for the purpose. It's for both copper
Okay.
and aluminum.
Great point. So if you find aluminum wiring in houses, it either takes a special connector to then convert it to copper, or it takes a special plug. This is what they call Decora. Looks like a pretty plug. This is the new style. It's an upgrade. Well, guess what somebody did? They went through that house and put all these in, and they're not aluminum rated. So they just put the aluminum wires right on it, just like you would any other plug, never thought twice. And over time, the heating and the cooling of the difference in the metals almost started a house on fire, okay? So just again, you know, little things like that can make a big difference.
Another thing, if you're using aluminum wire, do not use the quick connect in the back where you plug it in.
Yeah, that's not made for that. You're absolutely right, okay? So we're gonna talk a little bit about valves. Pretty much 3 rules when it comes to a valve in a house. The first and most important is use it or lose it. How many of you have gone to use your valve and you go to shut it off and it doesn't work? When was the last time you checked that valve?
It was a while.
It was a while, okay? I can almost guarantee you that if you leave your valves for much more than a few years at a time, they will fail. Because Utah has extremely hard water. It gets in there, calcifies, and when you go to turn it on or off, it will leak, okay? So use it or lose it. I'm a big fan, when you're going through doing your inspections, turn all your valves on and off once a year. If you do that, you'll know, one, if it's gonna fail and you catch it versus a tenant tries to use it and it fails and floods your house, okay? All these slides, they'll be up, I think, on the website, so don't worry about writing them all down, but if you wanna take any kind of notes, go for it, but at least the slides here will be up there. How many people always forget that? It took me years as a kid. You know, I'm always out there on my bike monkeying around my dad over and over again. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So on this kind of a valve, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So in your 30-year-old homes, this is going to be the kind of a look that you're going to have, usually above your water heater, and for your main valve when you go to turn it off, okay? Turn it clockwise, counterclockwise, on and off. And then for the newer valves, inline is parallel, on, cross is closed. So cross equals closed, okay? And here's just a different setup where you can see closed, open. That one looks like it's going up, so it would be open, and again, open here, okay? So when you're instructing your new move-ins, show them what kind of valve you have. Draw, like I say, there by the water heater, on top, or anywhere. Off, do an arrow, on, or even right on the pipe. That is going to save you guys a lot of time and money. Anybody ever fixed one of these when they failed inside the house? What'd you do?
You have to turn off the water first.
Okay.
But if you've got to solder it in, it depends on what's wrong with it.
Okay, so you might have to cut it out and solder in a new one. Have you ever fixed them when they're just still in line and you don't take them all the way out?
Yeah, I've just taken out the top and replaced the...
Okay, so there's 2 places this is going to leak. Sometimes, you know, it'll be dripping out of here, and the other time it'll drip out of here, okay? So there's 2 quick fixes you can do. If it's leaking out of here, you can open up this nut, and there's some little bit of what they call Teflon packing. It's not Teflon tape, but it's actually called packing. You can wrap that in there, tighten the thing back down, and usually seal that drip, okay? If it's leaking out of here, you got to take the whole thing out, and on the end, there's going to be some washers. And if you take them down to a good plumbing supply warehouse, they'll say, oh, that's a 0 or a 0, 0. They'll match up the washer, put it back in, and you're good to go. Do your test when you're there, turn this thing off, and go check your water. Because probably 50% of the time, these things are 20, 30 years old, you're going to think you have a shut-off in the house off, and what's it going to do? It's going to run. Because that washer that sits right inside of here, that mates up with it, over time, that water's gone through and caused it to the point where it's not going to be able to seal anymore. So test your main shutoffs, and then you can also go through and test the others. So water plus a house equals lots of damage. Okay. Here's just some different shutoffs. These ones are going to be mostly your sinks, your toilets. This one's going to be your main valves. This one's going to be your older style, and then these ones are going to be your kind of your gas styles. Okay. So just again, show people how to use those. Shut off order. Where are you going to shut it off first? Can't hear you.
Under the sink.
Under the sink, local area, okay? At the source of the problem. So if they call you, my sink's dripping, great. Turn it off under the sink. Did the drip stop after a few minutes? Wonderful. We'll have the guy out tomorrow instead of tonight on time and a half or double time or an emergency call out, okay? Second source, and again, if you have to do this and wait until the next day, it's an inconvenience to the tenant, but you can have them turn it off at the inside main. I'm sorry, you're inconvenienced. However, we'll have somebody there first thing tomorrow morning, first thing Monday morning, okay? There's nothing in the law that says you have to have that on every hour, every single day. As long as you're making an accommodation to get that fixed, you can take care of it that way. And last is, and you'll probably only do this if you're fixing it yourself and don't tell the city, but you can have it shut off in the outside main if, like the gentleman in the back said, you've got to turn the water off to fix one of your main turnoffs, okay? Any questions with water on and off? Going too fast? Too slow? Good? Okay. Who knows the difference between a quarter turn versus a multiple turn? What's the big difference?
Just that, it's a quarter turn, turns it on.
Turns it on and off. So any of the new valves?
It's a ball valve as opposed to a gate.
Exactly. Yep, ball versus a gate. And it's, instead of it going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to get it all the way on or off, it's just a quarter down or a quarter up, okay? So almost anything you buy nowadays is going to be a quarter turn. How many of you have replaced these? Okay, a couple. They're actually really, really easy. You see this nut back here? If you take this nut off, this whole piece from here forward will just slide right off. And what you're going to see is a compression nut on that copper pipe. Little trick is if you take your Teflon tape and wrap that compression nut, not the threads, because if there's ever compression threads, you don't need that. But if you actually wrap that nut, put the new one on, crank that thing down, you'll rarely have any leak right there, okay? These though, because it's a compression, get yourself 2 big wrenches and tighten those things down real good, otherwise you will get drips from right here in the back of that, okay? $5 probably, or 2 or 3. If your other one seems to be leaking a little bit, just get rid of it, put a new one on. It's going to save you a lot of money, time, and headaches down the road. The other thing that you guys need to be aware of, if you have this multiple turn, often it will leak all the way through the on position, and it'll only seal if it's fully on or fully off. If that's happening, that's a good sign. It's probably time to get rid of that valve, because otherwise it will fail on you down the road. And the tenant might adjust it, not get it all the way on or off. Drip, 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 drip. Now it's gone through your kitchen cabinet, the kitchen floor, the basement wall, the basement carpet, and on you go. Again, show them how to turn a toilet off. How many have dealt with an overflow toilet? A lot of times, 1/4 turn could have solved it.
And they don't do it.
They don't do it. They don't do it. And I think the biggest reason is they're not reminded and they haven't been shown. If you have a 1/4 turn there and you know it works, turn. Just tell those tenants, anytime you see water coming all the way up to the top of the bowl, go turn that instantly and then call me. Don't call me and say, hey, I got water coming out everywhere. Turn it off and then call, okay?
I love that. It's been dripping for 2 weeks, but it just now started to flood. It drives me crazy. But you do it a lot.
So, again, here's a good example of what you're going to see inside the house typically. It's parallel, just again, in line, it's on. This crosses it, it's off. This you usually don't see because this is more like in Arizona. Usually we'd see this inside your basement walls, but in Arizona, California, where it doesn't freeze, all that will be outside. Outside water main, is this one on or off? On. Okay, remember, here's the little point. It's running in the line. If you ever turn it, then it's crossed, and they can put the little lock for the tenants that like to steal it. Alrighty, so do you want pleats or not pleated?
Please.
I
Okay.
like the pleats.
And then do you want the high allergen ones or the real basic ones?
I like the basic, they're cheaper.
They are cheaper, and a lot of AC guys will actually tell you the higher filtration they are, the less airflow, and the higher chance of having problems. So a lot of times they'll say, oh yeah, they're good for 3 months, 6 months, but because they are such a good filtration system, it's actually not allowing that AC a lot of times to suck enough air. So,
Yeah, and that's a good comment. If you don't get enough airflow on your AC, you freeze.
yep, and we're gonna go into that in just a minute. So if you see your tenants using these, tell them no, no, okay? This is basically just a few little pieces of fiberglass, and a lot of the stuff goes right through there. They've got some cheap ones. Here's an example of one inside it. What I've found in all the years of experience is if they're inside like this, how often do they get changed? Okay? Spend the 40, 50, 75 bucks, have your AC guy come out, cut you a little opening right there, slides right in, slides right out. You can see right there on the opening what the date was that they put that one in. Again, inside versus if you have one outside. If you have one outside, chances are it's going to get changed a whole lot more than if it's inside there.
How often do you recommend changing those?
That's a great point. I've got another slide here, once a month. If you get the 3-pack, it's 10 bucks. That's $3 a month. There's no reason why any tenant can't do that. How many of you seen this setup before? Okay. How much good is that doing? A lot of head shakes, nada. Airflow comes down, comes here, and goes right up and over, and in it goes, okay? So if you don't have a good hook or some kind of a good slot, it's just going to be blowing around in there, and it's not going to do one thing for you. Except that, okay? Can't remember if, I think that one I might have pulled off the internet, but I've definitely seen blower motors that look like that. Gentleman in the back sounds like he's had some experience. What are these pictures of?
Those are the coils
Okay,
where the refrigeration fluid goes through.
exactly. What's the difference between the two?
One looks good and one doesn't.
Okay, this one didn't have an air filter for for a long time. This one has had an air filter. Okay, the way these coils work is just like your radiator. It has those little tiny fins, and the minute that those go and get plugged, the air can no longer go up through there, and like the gentleman mentioned, it's going to ice up. Okay. Anybody had this repair done? Show of hands. If they have to cut the refrigeration lines and open it up, suck all the Freon out, pull it out, clean it, put it back in, recharge it, you're looking probably $300, maybe $400. Your properties that you allow animals at, that is what animal hair is going to do all the time if that filter is not changed on a regular basis. Okay? So when you start getting AC problems, typically that's what it looks like in the inside, but you cannot see that because it sits up on top of your furnace. So unless they pull the panel off and get up there with a mirror, you're not going to know it looks like that, but I'm going to show you a few signs so then that way you know what's actually going on inside. This one I actually did, that's my picture. This wasn't one of my tenants' houses, this was a house we do maintenance for a client. But that was their filter on the right, and they had this new one sitting right next to it. Okay? That's the new filter we just put in. You can see all of this dirt and dust, the different color in the line right here. Look at this, do you see that? Just imagine your computer at home looking like that. That's exactly the same thing. That is a control board completely covered in dust to the point now where, and it's going to get hot, might fry you, and you know, you got big problems coming. That is how the filter looked when we took it out. Say again?
Because it was sucking.
It was sucking. This was one of the filters. It sat here on the inside, and there's a bar in the middle. That bar sat right here. That thing was pulling so hard, it eventually just bent that filter so then the air could go on both sides of it. The minute that happened, there's not even the filter's not doing anything at that point in time. Okay? There's just a TP if you ever wanted to go camping.
I've also had a situation where I had a tenant that used lots of candles.
The wax.
And well, as it burned, the wax had been airborne, and that also messed up the filter. And
Good point.
I said now it's a policy with me, no candles.
It's a good point. Or they burn your house down too. We like snow cones. All you got to do is bring your flavoring. Okay? How many of you had the phone call in the middle of the summer that my house is hot and my air conditioning's not working? First thing to ask them, go outside, look at the back of the unit. Sometimes if there's some insulation, usually right there at the very end, there won't be any. Say, do you see anything that looks like an icy? If they do, you know that that's traveled all the way from inside the house all the way to the outside. Okay? If they don't see it outside, you can sometimes have them go back inside and right where the line goes in, have them look right there. If it looks like this, they've iced up. Okay? How do you get rid of it?
Blow dryer.
Okay, blow dryer, there's a better way. It's going to take a long time to defrost. No?
I was just going to say turn it off and let it thaw.
It'll take days. Just turn the heat on. 30 minutes, it's going to be dripping like crazy. Okay? And you hope it doesn't drip onto your control board and take it out. But basically, any AC guy, that's what they're going to do. They're going to come out, charge you $100. They're going to change the filter, turn the heat on for about 30 minutes, and the thing will be up and running again. Okay? If it's not iced up and this motor over here is not running, then there's a capacitor that goes out and it's not kicking it on. So that's going to be your second most common problem. But this is the first one right here.
So what causes that?
Bad airflow typically. Okay? And then, so it's a sign that they haven't changed their filters, or where your cold air returns are in the house, they put furniture all the way up so close, they basically block that off so the unit can't suck enough air. Here's another picture where I said if you have them go outside, right here where the insulation ends, that's the place to look for. If you see your ice there, or the same exact thing inside the unit, you know it's iced up. 9 times out of 10, bad airflow. They've ran the filter too long without it. And if you change the filter, it got fully defrosted and you're still having the same problem, chances are you're going to get stuck with a coil bill. And that's one where you got to make the determination, are you going to bill that to the tenant, or are you going to pay for it yourself?
I've had a serviceman tell me that you tell the tenants not to turn down their air conditioning temperature less than 78 degrees.
Okay, most tenants aren't going to live in a house that's 78 degrees. But if they're trying to cool it to 69, 68, 67, yeah, they might have a problem.
Probably.
Normally, the problem happens when the outside air is colder than the inside air. And so therefore, you can't have that exchange, and you will see icing in those instances too. But yeah, that's just a tough thing. I mean, most tenants, they want to be 74, 73, 72. If you've got a well-running machine, it's not going to have any problem. But yeah, I mean, my wife's classic example. She'll have the doors open and the heat running, and then in the opposite, she'll have the AC going and it's colder outside. And it's like, you know, not only is there the energy bill, but there's the, hey, wait a second, that's not good for the unit. So air conditioners, filters, change them monthly. There's a $10 3-pack pleated at most all your hardware stores. If it's clogged, again, it's either part of the icing, the blower motor, the control board, or the new coils. It can cause all of those problems, okay? So when you get a clogged one, it'll ice up. Sometimes it'll take out the blower motor from all of the dust. The control board, if it ever drips on it, can take it out. And then sometimes, if they've gone long enough, that picture of those coils, they'll actually rust from the outside in to the point where you no longer have Freon in your system.
I don't want to toot anyone's horn, but if you call some servicemen, return air is huge on this stuff.
It is.
In most of your homes, the return air is undersized. So you might want to just call someone that you know, and they can add some return air. You know, so Rocky Mountain Gas Association used to work with them. But if your duct design is bad, you're going to have a problem.
And a lot of times, you know, with the hodgepodge going on, they will take units that are not sized properly and put them into a house. So it's like a 3-ton blower with only a 1-ton worth of airflow. And I mean, you know, we're getting pretty technical, but there's great point. How many people have had issues with condensation drains? That's a drain coming off your air conditioner, and I've seen it several times or numerous times. They'll get clogged, they no longer drain, you now have a flood, okay? You can know when they're clogged when right up on top of that furnace, it's kind of like the 2 levels, right before it goes to the silver, it's wet there, or there's no water near your drain, or you're getting that green color right there on top of your furnace. That usually means it's not draining properly, that fills up with water, starts spilling out. So make sure those PVC pipes, or sometimes it'll be a poly pipe, you get those clean. Who has evap coolers on their properties? Okay? All summer long, we're gonna see floods and problems. Skunk stripe. How many of you guys have this going on your roof? Don't be shy. Okay? That white color is caused by water drying and leaving the calcification on the roof, okay? Problem is, in the solution, usually either the drain is not adjusted properly, there is no drain pipe, or the whole pan itself is leaking. If you start seeing this on your house, you've got a problem. Get it fixed right away, okay? They're not meant to look like that. Here's what they look like when you don't take care of them. Outside, this is what it's going to look like inside. How many people have looked at a house and seen a roof patch right where the swamp cooler drains? Yeah, a lot of them. Biggest reasons, again, is they've never drained it properly. So there's a few things you can do to drain it. You can take a drain line all the way down to your rain gutter. You can let it go all over your roof, which is not recommended. Or lastly is what they call a wet vent through one of your roof jacks. If anything's lower than your swamp cooler, you see those little black pipes coming out? You can take your hose and stick it in that pipe, and they call that a wet vent, and it'll actually drain there, okay? Either way, there's pros and cons. If it's draining in there and it's not set up right, you're not going to know it's draining. You know, the tenants might have a high bill, but so what? At least your house is protected. Or if you drain it into your rain gutter, if you don't catch it quick enough, now all you've done is, instead of having the water go to your roof, it's going to go to your basement there where your rain gutter comes out. If there's a pan leak, you're pretty much toast. You can try to spray on a new liner, or otherwise you can replace the whole unit. If you do replace them nowadays, there's almost a $500 rebate through Rocky Mountain Power if you do an energy efficient one. And these are set up in 2 stages. They're really cool because the reason is this is the only place there's water. and this has nowhere near your vent. And so all your venting is either here underneath or over here. So your vent and your water is completely separate, so you don't have the problems like you do in the past where it's going right down to your house. The other thing is your supply line leak. How many of you guys have valves like that? Pretty much, okay? Guaranteed leaker right there, okay? This little dot punctures the line, and pretty soon it's going to start to fail right there, okay? The other thing they do a lot is they run it in that little clear pipe. Polypropylene or something is what they call it, I think. That stuff will get brittle, it will crack, and it will flood the inside of your house. So a few solutions is to use one of these. Anybody have this on their house? One in the back. Best invention there is. Put this on the spigot, they can still open and close their water, and then this one goes up to your swamp cooler so you have no water whatsoever running through your house. You guys can pass that one around. And then use this kind of pipe. Anybody know what this is called?
Is that poly?
PEX. Yep, it's the same stuff they pipe your whole house with nowadays. Fill this when you pass it around and look at how thick it is on the inside. This one will not rupture like you would typically those ones that you find at Home Depot or Lowe's. And then we're almost to the end here. We'll turn it over to the disability law, right? How many people have this kind of stuff for their drains? Okay, had a fun service call one time from the maintenance company. Property manager calls us, this guy's basement keeps flooded. Okay, we go there, slope looks okay, sprinklers look okay. Thinking, what the heck, there's no downspouts near it. This guy had this stuff because all the builders use it. Why do they use it?
Footing drain.
Cheap?
It's footing, they make a footing drain.
Yeah, and it's easy to run. Okay, they just lay it in there. It comes in a 100-foot roll. They love it. Okay, bad idea. Anybody know why? What is it?
Water just goes through it.
Water goes through it, and what else goes? All the dirt and all of the tree roots and all of the debris go right inside. So what we found on this guy's house was 40 to 50 feet away from his window, he had one of these going through his landscaping, and the trees got in there, blocked it up, so every time it would rain, water comes down the downspout, hits the blockage, runs up, travels down a little hill, and all the way down to the edge of the side of his house and into his basement window. The way we found it is we took the garden hose, started sticking it in all the downspouts, and just let them run, and within a few minutes we found it. So, solution is, where did my little clicker go? Solid white, an adapter, and a clean out, okay? If you look at that white pipe down at the end, you put it together, you don't duct tape it. I was using this for something else, okay? There's this little adapter. This fits on kind of right here. You cut your little flip off of your downspout, hook it into here. This goes down into the ground. And then this is the best contraption ever. Okay? See what this does? Becomes a catch for all of the asphalt off the top of the roof, any of your leaves, anything else, okay? So all you have to do, pop off your top, stick your hand in there, throw it out, and you're good to go, okay? So I've actually, on my house, I've got almost 150, 200 feet of that, taking all of my downspouts, collecting them, and putting it out basically at the sidewalk with a clean out, okay? If you ever want to and you want to even get more, you can have a clean out right down where the downspout comes. Debris falls in here, water fills up, out it runs. You'll never, ever basically have a problem, okay? So huge there. That'll save you a ton. Again, strongest force in nature. Here's all of our water. Comes down our downspouts. Most of our properties look just like this. Water pools, sinks down to the ground, in comes the basement. No gutters, same thing, comes down, this and downspouts into the basement. Water's our strongest force. concrete is porous, okay? How many times do people say, oh, all you need to do is just insulate the concrete? You see them spray it on it in new houses. Yeah, it helps a little bit, but water will find a way. If it can't go through that area, it will go down and come up through the floor, okay? So you've got to get good slope on your properties and try to get that water moved away. Real quick, if you guys do your own fertilizing, great. Don't leave this to the tenants because no tenant is going to take care of your yard and fertilize it. If you keep your yards fertilized and the grass is healthy, you're not going to have very many weed problems. This is in there, but it basically, if you ever see a number, there's 3 numbers on a bag. Easy way to remember it, up, down, all around. The first number is your nitrogen, and if you don't like to mow a lot, you can actually get by with 1 pound of nitrogen for every 1,000 feet instead of about 3 pounds, what the manufacturers tell you because they want you to buy more fertilizer. Okay? And that's always based on a 100-pound bag. So there's some little things there. If you guys are here in Salt Lake, Steve Riggins' a great place to go. They can sell you all kinds of stuff. Lastly, weed killer. Anybody ever use Speed Zone? Davis County School District spend over $500,000 on that product alone. It's a broadleaf killer and it'll basically take out dandelions in 24 hours. Okay? It's expensive, but it's the best stuff out there that I've ever been able to find. And then if you need to kill everything, there's kills all Roundup. If you get those bad grasses growing up, sponge it on the top of that grass and it'll actually pull down and kill just that little area, because if you spot spray, you're going to kill everything around it. So that's just another little trick. That's what the Speed Zone looks like. And again, that's just, you concentrate, you use a little bit of it, spray it on your weeds, and instantly, basically, the next day or two, you'll see them completely die. There's my email. It'll be up there. If you guys ever have any questions, you're welcome. Email. I don't put my cell phone number out there just because I don't want a bunch of tenants to end up with it, but email me, and if you want, leave your phone number. I'll call you back if you ever have any other questions. So we've got maybe just 1 minute or something, 2 minutes before we turn the time over. Anybody else got any questions real quick?
Go back to your clean out there.
Yes.
You just have one entry in.
Yes, you can have multiples depending on how you do it, but a lot of times you would just put this at the end of the line, and then all of your water would bubble up and then just go the rest of the way out to your curb,
Okay,
basically.
so you're putting it out surface with grass once you're away.
Yep, yep, because you're already coming down maybe a little bit of the slope, so you just kind of turn it slightly, pop it off, clean it out, you're good to go. Anybody else?
On the supply lines from the
Outside?
what do you like up front for the sink? What do you like, the wire braided or the plastic ones, or they all made of the same material?
I don't know, I think from a longevity, the PEX are probably, they might be higher rated, but they're harder to work with. So, I mean, a good plumber or a good handyman's going to know how to use the PEX ones just as easy, and they'll probably run them in those because it's cheaper, but it really doesn't matter. Good question, though. Just remember, if it's plastic line or PEX, you've got to use a plastic ferrule. If it's copper, then you have to use a copper ferrule. So that's really the only trick. Okay, great questions. Well, thank you all. I actually live up in Davis County, so I'm headed out of here. But appreciate all your guys' great comments and questions. And again, thanks for being here. And I hope that was helpful. You guys were able to learn some new stuff.
All right, so thank you very much, Brandon. And we will put these slides up on the website, so you'll have the opportunity to see them again later if you'd like. And then while Bart is setting up here, by the way, this is Bart from the Disability Law Center. We'll be presenting really quickly about fair housing for us. I'm going to make sure everybody got one of these. I should do it right now.
One last one, guys. This is another valve that you need to open and close when you're doing them once a year. Okay? Water heater, T&P. If it stops to drip, hit it a couple times up and down, and then take a hammer right there, or just something small, just kind of give it a little tap. It'll usually reset. If it doesn't, you got to get it replaced. But these ones will start to leak on you. Same thing if you don't keep them going. Anybody want some pecs? That one's too small of a piece for me to use, so. Oh, there it is.
When you run that underground, how, take it down 3 feet? So it's a little-
Oh, no, just enough to make it so that it clears your aerator, so you only need to be 4 to 6 inches underneath the ground.
So as you come off of the roof, you run 4 or 6 inches underground. Just wherever you want it to drain.
Yeah. Yeah, just as long as you've got some good slope, that's all that matters. I mean, you can go out.
So wintertime, it won't freeze because of that kind of stuff.
Sometimes you'll get a little bit of it, but if it's freezing there, it's gonna freeze all the way up, and then you've got ice dams, and it's gonna be the same whether it's just dripping off, because it'll actually just create an ice dam going up to the end of the downspout anyways, so. And you can run your ice melt through these if you want to. So, we'll have fun. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, well, I guess I'm on. So I'm going to be spending a few minutes just kind of doing a review of fair housing. And I think that most people here probably had a fair housing training, but can I have a show of hands of who's had a fair housing training before? Okay, good. So hopefully this will just be a review. My name is Bart McGuire, and I'm with the Disability Law Center. And I did one of these meetings for Paul a couple nights ago, and he actually introduced me as the enemy. And I don't want to be the enemy. I want to be able to educate you guys about fair housing. So I'm gonna go over the laws. I'm gonna kind of talk about what we do at the Disability Law Center, so you'll understand why he calls me the enemy. I want to start out by saying that this is just general information. I'm not an attorney, and only an attorney can give legal advice. We have attorneys on staff at the DLC. If you have any questions about any of this, you're more than welcome to give us a call. You can call the apartment association, and I'm assuming get connected with Kurt and his staff. He makes himself available to apartment association members, I believe. If you have questions about fair housing or landlord tenant issues.
You actually have to be one of his clients, I believe, isn't that?
Yes,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
they'll answer simple questions.
Oh.
But yeah.
Or you can call us. So just a little bit about the Disability Law Center and what brings us here. We're what's called a protection and advocacy agency for people with disabilities. So every state in the nation has an agency like ours, and there's a federal mandate that says there has to be one in every state, and they're appointed by the governor. And so what we do overall is basically advocate for the rights of people with disabilities. So if someone who has a disability has one of their civil rights violated, or they're discriminated against in some way, then they can give us a call, and we can advocate for them, maybe represent them in certain situations. Last year, or actually in 2012, we received some funding from HUD to set up a fair housing testing program. And so because the money was coming from HUD, it kind of expanded what we were doing in this area to people who belong to all protected classes, so not just people with disabilities. So we deal with discrimination and fair housing as it relates to all of the protected classes, and I'll go over those in a minute. And when we're talking about fair housing, we're talking about discrimination. I go out, I do a lot of trainings, and a lot of times I have people come up to me and tell me about situations in housing that they're not really fair situations, but that doesn't mean fair housing. When we're talking fair housing, we're really talking discrimination. And so that's treating people differently based on their membership in a group or certain traits that they might have. And then in housing, that means making decisions based on their eligibility or whether or not somebody can live in a certain place because of that. The Fair Housing Act is the law that really drives all of the fair housing work that we do. The Fair Housing Act was enacted in 1968, and it was created to give people in housing basically equal opportunity. Before this act was enacted, a lot of times when people go out looking for a place to live, they might hear something like, sorry, we don't rent to people like you. Or they would see signs that said, whites only, or no Catholics, or no Jews, or no blacks, or whatever trait someone might have. And so as a result of that, Congress passed this law. In 1988, they passed the Fair Housing Amendments Act that kind of expanded it a little bit and added a couple of protected classes. And so there's 7 federally recognized protected classes. And can anybody name all 7 for me tonight? Or at least name a few of them?
National origin, religion, familial status, which is a Utah one.
Sex.
Familiar status is a federal one.
Oh, source of income is the Utah
Right,
one.
source of income is Utah. Somebody said sex. That's about half of them. So these are the 7 federally recognized protected classes. So race, color, national origin. So that's where somebody is from, or even where somebody's family is coming from. Religion, sex, familial status. So families with children are protected. So that means under the age of 18. If there is a couple and they have a 25-year-old child living with them, that doesn't count under familial status. But also pregnant mothers or single parents with children, they're also protected. And disability. So those are the 7 federally recognized ones. Here in Utah, like you said, source of income is also protected. So where somebody's money is coming from, basically